Hello, my friends. This is Rabbi Aharon Dobinsky coming to you today from the holy city of Jerusalem, in the beautiful country of Israel. I know what you're thinking. What happened? What happened to the black and white? Well, let me tell you something. It's hot today. Really hot. Really, really hot. So this is my civilian clothes for the day to respond to the heat. It was a little bit cooler without all the vests and the coats and everything else that I normally wear. But that's not what I'm here to talk to you about today. You know, when we're young, as we're growing up, the thought of death doesn't even come into our minds. We are invulnerable. We are beyond death. We're going to live forever. That's how we feel most of our lives, as a matter of fact. From the time we're just into this world, when we hear that somebody, God forbid, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, somebody has passed on, it's almost hard for us to deal with because we can't even imagine the fact that somebody actually leaves this world, unless they're very, very old. Very, very old. By the way, very, very old is purely a subjective call. To some people, when you're 20, 40 is very, very old. To some people, when you're 50, 70 is very, very old. When you're my age, very, very old is triple digits. You're 100 and something. That's very, very old. Do we think about death? Yeah, it crosses our mind, yeah. But most of us kind of have this thought in the back of our mind that we're going to live forever with God's help. Because we live in a time of the coming of Mashiach, when there's going to be Techiyat HaMesim, all the dead will rise, and everything is going to go on. It's going to be the Maves Mesim, the death of death, okay? So, what would it be like to be able to live forever? It's got to cross your mind. I mean, you think to yourself, for living forever, well, that'd be something else. You get to see your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, your great-great-grandchildren, your great-great-great-grandchildren, and so on and so forth. But it's simply such an impossible thing when you actually think about it with regards to reality. However, it's happened. And if it's happened, it means it could happen again. I want to talk to you about two specific examples that are very, very close, because this is something that I was working on this week with one of my Ravs. I'm talking about one that was very simple, and one that was not really so simple, but the ramifications were much more far-reaching. Let's start with Pinchas. We just finished with Pinchas a couple of weeks ago. Pinchas was a grandson of Aharon Kohen, but he was not a Kohen. You see, the way it worked out was the sons of Aaron became Kohanim, and their children after that date, after that time, they were also Kohanim. But you see, Pinchas, who was born to Eleazar, was already alive at the time that Aharon became Kohen Gadol. So he was kind of left to the side. I know, it doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem right to me either. Particularly as a Kohen, it doesn't seem right to me either. But that's how it happened. And he was to the side. And here's Pinchas, with all of his intention, all of his great intentions in serving Hashem, all the things he wanted to do to help the people of Israel to get ready to come into the land of Israel. What did he do? Well, you remember the story about Balak and Bilam. And they wanted to get rid of the children of Israel. And they wanted to curse them. And every time they tried to curse them, they couldn't curse them because the words that kept coming out of Bilam's mouth were blessings. They weren't curses. And how was you going to curse somebody with blessings? So finally they came to the conclusion that maybe this wasn't going to work. So they had to try and see if they could do something else. So what did they do? Well, they went to apply to the lowest common denominator. They went to the women of Midian and sent them in to tempt the men of Israel. Could they do it? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. When my girls were growing up, I used to tell them men are pigs. And I didn't mean it that literally, but I wasn't who I am today. And the fact is, a lot of times men have on their minds that particular part of their lives. And it's very, very top of the mind awareness. So when these women came in, all dressed up in their finest clothes and all dressed up in their best jewelry and their finest makeup, it was hard for even the most devout of Jewish men to pass up on this. But what was happening as a result of it is Hashem was not happy. This is not the life that he put Israel there to live. So a plague was getting ready to start, and they could see the rumblings of the plague coming. Pinchas knew this was coming. And Pinchas has what we call holy boldness. In other words, he's very forthright, but in a very holy way. And he knew the reason for this was these women of Midian coming in to take the men. And while he's sitting here stewing over this with Moshe Rabbeinu, one of the men, the head of one of the tribes, the tribe of Shimon, went with one of the Midianite women and decided to do what they do right in front of everybody. Well, that was a big mistake, cost them their lives. Why did it cost them their lives? Because Pinchas saw this. And he put two and two together immediately and realized this was exactly the reason why the plague was coming. So he picked up a spear and he ran them both through. He went through both of them, killed them both. And she was a princess of Midian, and he was head of a tribe. But they had to go. And this kind of started the end to the plague, and there was more to it than that. But this is the only part we're going to deal with today, is that particular part. Now, because he did this, you might remember, he was now to be a Kohen for all time. Even though he wasn't supposed to be a Kohen. But God can do that. He can change his mind. And he saw something great in Pinchas. So he wanted to be among his priests, among his Kohanim. By the way, Kohen sounds like so fancy, like priest. Oh my gosh. He's a Kohen, he's a priest. What it really means basically is a servant. You serve the people. And that's what we're supposed to do. All of us as Kohanim. Serve the people. So he now became a Kohen for all time. But the story ends there as far as we know, but it goes further and further and further. Pinchas was with Israel when they came into Israel. Pinchas was with them when they attacked. Pinchas was one of the leaders. He was one of the leaders of the Kohanim, helping the people to conquer the land. What we don't get until much later on, we have to fast forward to get to this point, was that Pinchas, the Kohen, became, they say, a lot of the sages say, became Eliyahu Hanavi. He became Eliyahu the prophet. So he went from being Kohen to being a Navi, a prophet. Something really special. And for those of us who forget our history a little bit, yeah, it's easy to do. Eliyahu didn't die. He left this world alive. He went off. And to this day, we wait for Eliyahu to come back to announce the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu. So it's a very thing. All from one thing. He threw a spear and killed the right people. The people who needed to die. Because that was what saved the nation of Israel from a horrible plague. And because of that, because of his holy boldness, doing the right thing at exactly the right time, look what happened. He became someone who lives forever. Eliyahu Hanavi was going to come back and tell us he's going to announce the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu. Now, that was a more difficult one. Let's talk about something very simple, though. There's someone else. I was just talking about this week in one of our classes. Her name was Serach ben Asher. Yeah, Asher. Yes, that Asher, the son of Jacob, one of the 12 tribes, that Asher. This was his daughter. How did she live forever? Well, after 22 years of Jacob grieving for the loss of his son Joseph, she came to him and she told him, how does she know? We're not going to get into that. But she told him Joseph was not dead. Not only was he not dead, but he was like the king of Egypt right now. And now this, of course, got Jacob off the ground, got him breathing again, got him living again, got him to thinking about what his purpose in life was, and started to live the life he was meant to live. And because of that, she lived, well, let's not say forever, but I'll give you where it goes from here. She was with King David. When David was ready to attack a city, she came out. She was the one they were called as the wise woman. And says, why can't you talk? You're supposed to talk before you conquer somebody. And she was right. And that's what they did. Anyway, she was still there at that time. Think about how much time passed. Almost 1,000 years between the time when she did what she did over after coming out of Egypt, before coming out of Egypt, going to Jacob, and with King David. A great span of time. And for that, she lived all those years. Finally, she got to about 1,000 or so years, and she said it was time for her to go. She'd seen enough of grandchildren and great-grandchildren already in old age dying, and she wanted to move on. And she went into Gan Eden, alive. There's only 4 other people who ever did that, and 3 of them didn't make it out in one piece. The only one who made it out was Akiva. And he didn't stay. He went in and came out. She went in and she stayed. So, this is the answer to how do you live forever? You have to do something that makes you extremely worthy. Bring one of the three patriarchs out of his depression. That's a great thing. Or stop a plague because something's coming up. There are other things. I'm not going to go into them now. Use your imagination. There are many other things. So if that's what you want to do, you truly want to live forever, and you better think about that before you say yes, then you know where you need to set your sights. So in the meantime, all the things we've talked about over the weeks are still important. The domestic violence that's going on around the world, the sickness that is going on around the world, we have to deal with these. And we have to do teshuvah for them. We have to do our personal teshuvah. We have to do our own personal redemption. Because if we do enough of our own personal redemption, we will have a total redemption and the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu and the building of the third Beit HaMikdash. Bimhei Rabbi Yameinu, my friends. If you get this before Shabbos, have a great Shabbos. If not, have a great week ahead. Shavua Tov. Be well. God bless you all.